Israeli government spokesperson Eylon Levy now saying that 29 of those hostages are confirmed dead, along with two other hostages that were taken prior to the October 7th attack. The information released as Hamas is proposing a new ceasefire plan that would include a truce of more than 4 months. Avraham Levine is an intelligence analyst at the Alma Research Center in Israel, joining us now live to discuss all of this. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to be here with us today.
Of course.
All right, so first off, I do want to ask you, there's been a lot of discussion about this latest ceasefire hostage release deal. Can you break down for me what we know about this so far and really what is still left to figure out overall?
So according to most publications, the basic deal that was offered to Hamas, and this is broad strokes, obviously this is before the final negotiations. This is just a beginning of negotiations, split up to a long period of about, like you said, 3-4 months, split up to 3 main stages. The first is a ceasefire of 40 or 45 days. Where Hamas releases the first batch, a lack of a better word, of hostages, mostly women, elderly, sick, and IDF completely withdrawing from Gaza. Second stage is the second batch, about the same length of time, and then, but this time the men, younger men and soldiers that are essentially the third bunch, if we remember the first ceasefire that we had a couple of months ago. And then the third is the final stage before we see that we can maintain a stable situation between us and Gaza. What Hamas did, first of all, they took their time responding, if you noticed. And essentially, they could have saved us a long time and just say no, because the reports that I see from Lebanon say that there's a lot of curveballs or high balls that are added on to that basic deal. Meaning, if you want in return to the about 100 hostages that are still alive, you want 1,500 terrorists returned to Gaza. That 500 out of them got sentenced for life, meaning they're murderers, terrorists. Add to that Temple Mount being close to Jews, add to that rebuilding all of Gaza, everything that was ruined, starting with the hospitals and factories, but essentially rebuilding all the destruction and damage, essentially means they're looking for a concession and not a compromise. That's how I see things.
Great analysis. Thank you for that. Now, as far as the information that was confirmed now by Israel saying that 31 hostages are confirmed dead here, does that impact the negotiation process at all? What role, if any, does that play?
Well, of course it changes. It could change everything. First of all, I'm sad to say that I assume the worst. It might be much worse than what we can confirm. IDF right now is telling us that we assume those are about 30. I saw 31. I saw 29. It could be way more, which means it could be a third or 50% that are already dead. So basically, Hamas is, not surprisingly, not negotiating in good faith. Hamas is promising goods that they do not have. And I think, of course, that changes. If eventually we see that when we release all these prisoners for nothing or for bodies that Hamas killed during the time that they're negotiating with us, I think that shows who we're dealing with.
Hamas says right now that it is only going to accept a deal that would include essentially a permanent ceasefire. Obviously, we know that the current deal that is reportedly on the table is about 4.5 months of a ceasefire. Is a permanent ceasefire at this point and Israeli troops pulling out of Gaza really a possibility? Is that, just based on what you've seen, even realistic?
Well, I can say that for me, that means we failed. For me, if that's the final decision and that's the only way we get the hostages, it means for me that we failed to solve the problem. We failed to eliminate the threat. And it will probably mean that in the near future, we'll have to go to war again. So all the people that died and sacrificed their lives in the current conflict did it for nothing. If we continue our lives as if nothing happened, then that means that over 200,000 people cannot return to their homes because the threat is still there. It means that the people that were lost their lives did it for nothing. We basically left the threat where it is. For me, it means we're still talking October 6th instead of realizing what happened on October 7th.
Why is it that Qatar is serving as the mediator here? That's been the discussion over the past several months. Qatar is kind of the middleman, so to speak. Why is that?
I think it's important to know. I think that's a great question, first of all, because Qatar is the bank behind Sunni radical terrorism all over the Middle East. That's true about ISIS. It's true about Taliban. It's true about Hamas. So for me, they're not an acceptable or legitimate mediator between us and Hamas. And essentially, if that's what we're hearing from Hamas, I can understand that we're getting this directly from Qatar, because essentially they're asking us to give up everything when I don't see any compromise from Hamas in terms of the number of prisoners, in terms of their demands, opening up all the gates, all the borders. Essentially, it's a deal breaker.
Yeah, that's a question that's been asked a lot, I would say, over the past several months. Now, we know that the visit to the Middle East by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is underway. Does that kind of signify, I guess, that a deal is really close, that they are very close to officially having a deal? Does that mean anything that he is there meeting with all of these different leaders, including Israel's president?
So I'm not trying to predict the future. To me, it doesn't say the deal is close. It means U.S. wants the deal to be close. It means that Blinken wants to finalize a deal. That's what I see when he comes to visit. It also shows me, at least it looks like, U.S. is looking towards some interests and goals on the expense of others. Meaning, if you put stability and quiet and ending this conflict at the top of the list, and not eliminating the threat, then you're actually putting stability at the expense of the civilians of Israel in the south and the north. And I'm sorry to say that that's what it looks like from our angle, that U.S. is here to keep things quiet without solving anything. And I think that's what we were trying to do for the past few years. Give Hamas money, help them rebuild, allow them to send workers into Israel, and all of this was exploited against us and exploded against us. So if we see the leaders, the planners, the executors, no pun intended, of October 7th left there because of this international pressure, not only U.S., then I think we did it for nothing.
When we talk a little bit about the leader of Hamas in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar there, does it appear that they are any closer to tracking him down? Because I know that Israel has said that they've gone to several different locations where it appeared that he had just been and then had left pretty quickly. Does it appear that Israel is closer to capturing him? And then if they do capture him, what happens next? Do we know?
When you look at the map of the areas that IDF is already in Gaza, it does look like we're getting closer to something. But truthfully, I haven't been in service since mid-December, so I do not have real information about this. So I'm not making any assumptions. And I'll put it this way: I didn't manage to decide what do I think we should do with him. And it really depends on how we catch him. If it's in battle, if he gives himself up, there's various situations that this can happen. But if we have the chance, I guess we'll do it the right way. This does remind me, when you hear Hamas equals Nazi, the Nazi regime, in terms of the atrocities and the massacre of October 7th, that does remind me the first and last time that Israel had a death sentence, and that was Adolf Eichmann in 1962.
All right, Abraham Levine, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and help break down some of the latest information. Anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Just a reminder, the war is not Israel Hamas. The war is Israel, Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis. That's what we're dealing with. And the world keeps on calling this the Hamas Israel war 2023. We're in 2024. There's missiles landing all over the Galilee daily. They're still shooting from areas that we officially already took over in Gaza. We still have a long time before we solve the situation.
It's very true. It's no longer the Israel-Hamas war. There's a lot of players that are now involved. Thank you again for taking the time to be here with us and break it all down. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great day.